Beneath the Earth's surface, hidden in veins of grey rock that have been forming for millions of years, lies a metal that has shaped entire civilizations. Lead is one of the oldest materials in human history. The Romans used it in their aqueducts. Alchemists considered it the starting point of all transmutation, and modern industry has made it the heart of every battery that powers an engine. But between raw rock and the perfect ingot lies an extraordinary journey. A journey that passes through underground explosions, furnaces exceeding 1,200 degrees Celsius, chemical reactions of millimeter precision, and purification processes that defy intuition. This script explores each of these stages with the same rigor with which fire works the metal, uncompromising, without shortcuts, until impurity is transformed into something bordering on perfection. Lead has the atomic number 82 on the periodic table. It is soft, malleable, exceptionally dense, and has a surprisingly low melting point for a metal, a mere 327 degrees Celsius. These physical properties, which at first glance seem like limitations, are precisely what make it indispensable. Its density makes it the best shield against radiation. Its low melting point makes it easy to work with. Its resistance to corrosion preserves it for centuries. And its relative abundance in the Earth's crust guarantees that the supply will not run out for the foreseeable future. Knowing where it comes from and how it is made is to understand why the modern world could not exist without it. It all begins several hundred meters below the surface. Deep within an active lead mine, the air is thick, humid, and heavy with the metallic scent characteristic of freshly exposed ore. Here, in tunnels excavated with millimeter precision, workers move among enormous drilling machines that bore into the rock with deafening ferocity. The target is galena, the most abundant lead ore on the planet. A silvery grey lead sulfide with an intense metallic sheen that gleams in the headlights as if it already knows what it will become. State-of-the-art hydraulic drills advance inch by inch against the bedrock. Their rotating heads of hardened steel pulverize the stone, releasing clouds of reddish-grey dust that the ventilation systems violently draw out. Once the blasting tunnels are drilled, specialized technicians surgically place the explosives into the boreholes. The controlled detonation shakes kilometers of rock in tenths of a second, releasing thousands of tons of ore in a brutal, earth-shattering instant that reverberates off the mine walls like thunder trapped underground. Heavy-duty excavators weighing over 100 tons burst into the freshly blasted area. Their alloy steel buckets bite into the crushed rock with impressive mechanical ferocity, loading underground haul trucks that ascend endless ramps to the surface. Here, under the daylight, the extracted ore reveals its full heterogeneity. Massive blocks of pure galena coexist with barren rock, white quartz, and other secondary minerals. To the naked eye, it's impossible to tell how much lead is in there, but the mine engineers know exactly. Each ton of raw ore contains between 5 and 10 kilograms of recoverable lead. All this material will undergo the first major transformation process. The raw ore arrives at the concentration plant in trucks that dump their loads with a brutal roar onto the receiving piles. From here, heavy-duty rubber conveyor belts carry it to the primary crushers. These colossal machines, veritable manganese steel behemoths, receive car-sized blocks and reduce them to manageable fragments in a matter of seconds. Their jaws rhythmically open and close, crushing the rock with a force of thousands of tons per square centimeter. The noise is absolutely deafening. The ground shakes as if it might open up beneath the visitor's feet. The crushed material then moves on to the ball mills, enormous rotating cylinders filled with hundreds of steel balls that grind the ore into a pulp as fine as flour. This process, called wet milling, adds water to the ore as the balls pound and wear down the rock, producing a thick, homogeneous, dark grey paste. The fineness of the grinding is critical. If the particles are too large, the galena grains become trapped within the waste rock and cannot be recovered. If they are too small, the subsequent separation process loses efficiency. The equilibrium point is a science in itself, monitored in real time by sensors and continuously adjusted. This grey paste is pumped into the flotation cells, the technological heart of the concentration process. In these constantly agitated tanks, specific chemical reagents, called collectors and frothers, are injected. These selectively coat the galena particles with a hydrophobic layer that makes them repel water. By injecting air through the bottom of the tank, bubbles rise, and the hydrophobic galena particles adhere to them like tiny balloons. They float to the surface, forming a dark, dense froth that mechanical scrapers continuously remove. The waste rock, unaffected by the reagents, sinks to the bottom and is discharged as residue. The result is galena concentrate, a paste with a lead content of between 60 and 75%, ready for firing. The galena concentrate arrives at the pyrometallurgical plant as a dark, wet paste that must first be dried. Enormous rotary steel dryers evaporate the remaining moisture before the material enters the roasting furnaces. Here, the profound chemical transformation begins. The concentrate is subjected to temperatures exceeding 700 degrees Celsius in the presence of enriched oxygen. The reaction is spectacular and brutal. The sulfur that binds the lead reacts with the oxygen in a violent oxidation, releasing sulfur dioxide in dense clouds of irritating and dangerous gas. Far from being a waste product, this sulfur dioxide is captured entirely by gas collection systems and redirected to sulfuric acid production plants, one of the world's most important industrial chemicals. Every ton of lead produced generates a significant amount of sulfuric acid as a byproduct, making the roasting plant a key supplier to the chemical industry. Not a single gram of toxic gas escapes into the atmosphere. The environmental control systems are so precise that the emissions measured at the chimney are, in many cases, lower than those from road traffic in a medium-sized city. What remains after roasting is lead oxide, a reddish-brown calcareous mass that gives off intense residual heat as it leaves the furnace and smells of iron and chemistry pushed to its limits. The operators, protected by reflective thermal suits and high-filtration respirators, handle this material with the precision and respect that its danger demands. The lead oxide is then combined with metallurgical coke, which will act as a reducing agent, and with fluxes such as limestone and silica, intended to capture impurities during smelting. This carefully measured mixture is called the charge, and it is the fuel with which the shaft furnace will perform its chemical masterpiece. The shaft furnace is an imposing structure that rises several stories above the plant floor. A steel tower lined internally with layers of specialized refractory brick capable of withstanding extreme temperatures for years of continuous service. At its top, a conveyor belt continuously feeds in the prepared charge. At its base, high-pressure tuyeres inject preheated air at 1000 degrees Celsius, fueling the coke combustion and maintaining the furnace interior in a state of perpetual chemical activity. The roar is constant, deep, and resonant, like the sound of something alive and hungry. Inside the furnace, temperatures reach 1200 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, the carbon in the coke undergoes one of the most elegant reactions in extractive metallurgy. It combines with the oxygen in the lead oxide, seizing it with a superior chemical affinity, and escapes upward as carbon dioxide. The lead, freed from its bond with oxygen, melts instantly and begins to accumulate in the crucible at the bottom of the furnace, where it gathers in a lake of molten metal that grows hour by hour, invisible from the outside, but measurable by the monitoring instruments. When optimal conditions are reached, the operator opens the tap hole, an opening sealed with refractory clay that yields to a precise blow of a sledgehammer. What emerges is a blindingly bright jet of liquid lead that flows through the cast iron channels like sunlight condensed into metal. The slag, lighter than lead, floats on top and is separated by overflow into side channels, where it solidifies into black, porous blocks that will be processed later to recover the trace metals they contain. The primary lead, still impure but already unmistakably metallic, falls into the receiving kettle with a dull, heavy sound that makes the plant floor vibrate. The lead that comes out of the blast furnace is called bullion, and despite its impressive metallic appearance, it still contains impurities of copper, arsenic, antimony, tin, bismuth, and silver. Its purity is around 97 or 98%, sufficient for some industrial applications, but insufficient for the most demanding uses. Pyrometallurgical refining is the process that will bring it to levels of purity that approach chemical perfection. In enormous hemispherical kettles made of high-strength steel, capable of holding between 200 and 300 tons of molten metal, the bullion is subjected to a series of treatments, each designed to remove a specific group of impurities. The first impurity to be removed is copper. Elemental sulfur is added to the molten lead bath, and the sulfur reacts preferentially with the copper, forming solid copper sulfide that floats to the surface as a blackish crust. Perforated ladles mounted on electric cranes systematically remove the silver, leaving the lead cleaner and shinier with each pass. Next, a controlled injection of air selectively oxidizes the arsenic and antimony, whose oxides are collected in the surface slag that forms and removed by the same process. Silver is next, and its recovery deserves special mention. Using the Parkes process, small amounts of molten zinc are added to the lead bath. The zinc preferentially dissolves the silver and gold, forming a metallic crust that floats on the lead and is removed intact. This crust, known as Parkes scum, is processed separately in a precious metals recovery facility where the silver and gold are distilled and purified. The residual zinc remaining in the lead is then removed by vacuum distillation in special retorts. Nothing is wasted. Every impurity that leaves the lead has value in another market. The last relevant impurity is bismuth, whose separation from lead by pyrometallurgical means is chemically impossible. The two metals are too similar. To remove bismuth, the Betz process is used, an electrolytic refining method of extraordinary elegance. Impure lead acts as the anode and is slowly dissolved in a lead fluorosilicate electrolyte. Simultaneously, on the cathode, pure lead is deposited atom by atom, layer upon layer, with a purity exceeding 99.99%. Bismuth and other residual impurities are trapped in the anode as a dark sludge that is recovered and processed. An X-ray fluorescence spectrometer certifies the final result with atomic accuracy. PB 99.97. In green digits that confirm the journey from the rock has reached its destination. Refined and certified lead is pumped through thermally insulated steel pipes to the continuous casting line. Hundreds of cast iron molds advance in synchronized procession along the production line, like a chain of vessels waiting to be filled. An automated pouring spout deposits the precise amount of molten metal into each mold, and the solenoid valve closes in tenths of a second to advance to the next. The molten lead bubbles gently as it settles, releasing the last of its residual heat, and a delicate oxide film immediately begins to form on its surface, progressing from the cool edges to the hot center, solidifying the ingot from the outside in. Enormous high-speed industrial fans mounted along the line blast streams of cool air onto the moving molds, accelerating the temperature drop in a controlled manner. Cooling chambers with atomized water showers complete the process, enveloping the line in dense columns of white steam that rise to the exhaust fans in the ceiling. The now completely solid ingots, rectangular blocks of matte silver gray, are automatically demolded by a pneumatic hammer that delivers a precise blow to the base of the inverted mold. The 2 5-kilogram ingot falls cleanly onto the conveyor belt with a dull, final thud. A colossal industrial robotic arm descends onto the line and firmly grasps 5 adjacent ingots at once, effortlessly lifting a load of over 120 kilograms. It stacks them layer upon layer in an interlocking pattern that ensures the structural stability of the finished pallet under its own crushing weight of 1 ton. An automatic wrapping machine rotates a thick, high-strength plastic film around the block at high speed, stretching it to the breaking point, securing with almost violent firmness what took weeks to produce. The yellow warning label is affixed to the taut plastic. Lead, 99.97%, highly toxic, specialized handling required. In the vast, silent warehouse, tens of thousands of tons of pure lead ingots wait in the shadows, perfectly stacked in rows that stretch into the distance. Some will go on to manufacture the car starter batteries that are sold by the hundreds of millions each year worldwide. Others will protect hospital X-ray rooms with radiation-blocking walls. The purest willpower, nuclear facilities, special cables, or radiation protection equipment that safeguards people from radiation that cannot be seen or felt. The lead that entered the plant as an anonymous, shapeless rock now leaves as a certified, marked, weighed metal, ready to begin its next life. A rock has become civilization. The cycle continues.
The rock has become civilization. The cycle continues.